بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله نحمده ونستعينه ونستغفره ونعوذ بالله من شرور أنفسنا ومن سيئات أعمالنا من يهده الله فلا مضل له ومن يضلل فلا هادي له وأشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له وأشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله ما بعد فإن أحسن الكلام كلام الله وخير الهدى هدى محمد صلى الله عليه وسلم وإن شر الأمور محدثاتها وكل محدثة بدعة وكل بدعة ضلالة وكل ضلالة في النار. In the previous lesson, we looked at a passage in at-Tahaawee's creed which dealt with the eternality of Allah's attributes. The fact that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has always been described with His names and attributes such as al-Khaliq, al-Raziq, and so on and so forth. And that He never acquired these names after creating the creation. So He was al-Khaliq before He created the creation. He was al-Razaq before He gave providence and sustenance to the creation. And so at-Tahaawee had 7 or 8 sentences or phrases in which he conveyed this meaning. And when we were discussing this subject in the previous lesson, we looked at a number of different positions that were held by different groups. So we mentioned from them, and we're talking here about the relationship of Allah's names and attributes to His creation. Now, what is the relationship of Allah's names and attributes to His creation? And we said that there were 3 different groups. First of all, we have the Jahmiyyah and the Mu'tazila. Then we had the Ash'aris and the Maturidis. And then we have Ahlul Sunnati wal Jama'ah. And we explained each of those 3 positions. And we're going to come back to that in a short while, inshallah. But today, if you remember in the last lesson, we said that we were going to look at another issue, which is what we call at-Tasalsul, which means at-Tasalsul, which means well, there's different ways we can translate it in English. One of the words that we can use is an endless chain of events. An endless chain of events. Another word that's commonly used is an infinite regress. Infinite regress. But I think an endless chain of events is probably a more simpler and easier one to use and to understand. An endless chain of events. And now the Shaykh is going to discuss, Shaykh Saalih Aal Shaykh is going to discuss this issue. And so what I want to do first is just again, because when we try to grasp the subject of Allah's names and His attributes and the views and the positions of the Jahmiyyah and the Mu'tazila and the Ash'aris and the Maturidis and that of Ahlul Sunnati wal Jama'ah, and we need to understand where each group is coming from and why they are saying what they are saying and why they are holding the position that they are holding, and so on and so forth. So we've got to really tie everything together so we can see the overall complete picture. So if you remember in the last lesson, towards the end, I believe it was in the question and answer session, we mentioned the fact that all of the Ahlul Kalam, they founded their belief with respect to Allah's names and attributes upon a proof, a rational proof, an intellectual proof that they wanted to use in order to demonstrate that the universe has a beginning, is originated, has a beginning, and therefore they argue, it has an originator and a creator. And so they used this proof against the atheist philosophers and the opposers to the religion of Islam. And so we mentioned this proof in a nutshell. We said that the way they argued, and this proof was taken from the Jews and the Christians and the Sabaean star worshippers, because these were some of the civilizations that were present at that time. And these civilizations, the Jews, the Christians and the Sabaean star worshippers, they had been affected by Greek philosophy and the language and terminology of Greek philosophy. And so they had already been speaking about belief in Allah with the type of language that the Ahlul Kalam from Islam, that they would later on start to use as well. And so anyway, so this proof was adopted and used in a crude form, in a simple form, by Al-Jahm bin Safwan. And he had taken it from Al-Ja'd bin Dirham. And this later went to the Mu'tazila and then to the Ash'aris and the Maturidis and so on and so forth. So this proof, really, as we said, basically what they argue is that because we see things having attributes and qualities in them, now everything has a quality or an attribute, at least something of the qualities and attributes. And we mean here things like width and height and breadth and depth and colour and taste and smell and all these things that you find, and even temporary things that happen to things, like a person might be ill and sick and have a headache and he might change colour. These are all temporary, what we call a'rad. These are incidental, temporary qualities and attributes that people go through. So what they said was that when we look in the universe, we see there's only two types of things. Either we have something which is a body, a thing which has spatial extension, it's physical, it has a tangible, we can see it, and either it is that, or it is an attribute or a quality, right? And then, so everything in the universe is either what they said, a jism, a body, or an arad meaning an attribute or an incidental attribute, which is like a non-permanent attribute, okay? So meaning the qualities in things, they are a'rad, the plural of arad. So things are either things or their attributes, simple as that, right? So to illustrate, we have a pen here. This pen, we can see it has spatial extension, it has breadth, width, height, depth. It's we can describe its texture, we can and so on and so forth. So everything we can look at is a thing with its qualities. So then they said that if we look at the qualities and attributes of things, we know rationally that the qualities and attributes of things can't exist on their own, right? So in other words, you can't have the colour red without a body in which that colour red exists, right? We can't have, likewise we can't have an illness unless there is a thing or something or a body in which that illness resides or manifests itself, okay? And so we apply the same thing to every single body or thing that we see in the universe, that the attributes that it has cannot exist on their own. And because they can't exist on their own, right, as I said before, you never see the colour green walking down the road, you never see a headache walking down the road, it must be in something. And so because these attributes require a body, and they can't exist on their own, it means that they must have a beginning. They must have had a beginning. They must have had, they are what we call, they are haditha or hawadith. They are events which had a beginning. And then from this step, they moved one step backward, and they said that likewise, the things, the bodies as well, which possess attributes and which possess qualities, since they can never ever be free of having attributes, since they are never devoid of having attributes, right? So for example, any object you look at, it simply cannot be devoid of any attributes. It must have something of attributes, right? So any object, like if you look at this top, it's called red. If you look at anything you look at, it has attributes. And because we've already established that attributes can't exist on their own, right? That they must need something for them to exist, and so therefore this proves that attributes have a beginning. Then they argued as well that anything which has attributes must itself also be originated and have a beginning, right? So anyway, with this basic method of reasoning, they then said that therefore everything in the universe that we see has a beginning, and then this is where you've got to pay attention now, right? Because this is the principle now that they used to connect all of the proof together, right? They said that now we've established that everything in the universe has a beginning, right? It has a beginning. All these things that we see have a beginning. Then upon the principle that an endless chain of events is impossible, right? That means that the universe and everything in the universe has a beginning, right? Because an endless chain of events in the past is impossible, right? Right, so you've got to pay attention to this principle. The endless chain of events in the past is impossible. They needed that principle to connect and tie all of the proof together, to prove that this universe actually had a beginning. right? And it had a beginning at a particular point in time, and the one who created it was Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Right? But that principle, an endless chain of events in the past is impossible, is what they needed in order to connect all of this proof together. Right, so now this is where the problem begins. This is where the problem begins. Now with this principle that they used, this explains the reason why they held the views that they held. Right? And this is what really ties into the previous lesson when we were discussing the views of the Jahmiyyah and the views of the Ash'aris and the views of Ahlul Sunnati wal Jama'ah. So let's recount them again, let's mention them again. So if you remember, we said that the Jahmiyyah and the Mu'tazila, they said that Allah never had any names and attributes. Allah doesn't have names and attributes, because that's their position, right? That's their view. And so the way they explain it is that when Allah created this creation, so when Allah created, and then when Allah, gave sustenance to the creation, when He showed mercy to the creation, when He showed forgiveness to the creation, it is then that the creation named Him with those names. So His names came to be when He created the creation. So He became the creator when He created the creation. He became the provider when He provided for the creation. He became the forgiver when He forgave the creation. And it was the creation who named Him with His names, and these names are created. And likewise, Allah also had these attributes of creating, providing, sustaining, being merciful, being forgiving, being so on and so forth, right, when He created the creation. But these attributes are not attributes He possesses, meaning in terms of that His essence is described with them. Rather, His attributes are just, like when we say Allah's mercy, we don't mean that there is an attribute with Allah which is mercy. Rather, all it simply means is the mercy that we find manifested in the creation. Do you understand? So in other words, because their view is that Allah cannot be described with attributes. If we describe Allah with attributes, it means there are multiple gods with Allah. This is a false reasoning they had. So in order to explain what is Allah's mercy, what is Allah creating, what is His attribute of creation, what is Allah's forgiveness, what is Allah's power, and what is it? They explained it to mean it is just what we see in the creation of these things. We see mercy, manifested in the creation. That is Allah's mercy. That is attribute, right? Not that it's an attribute of His essence, but we can say it's an attribute to His, even though it's something created and external and separate from Him, right? So this is what the Mu'tazila and the Jahmiyyah, this is what the general explanation that we find in their particular direction. So what they say is that Allah acquired names and attributes when He created the creation. So then all these meanings came to be, and the creation named Him as Al-Khaliq, Al-Razzaq, and so on and so forth. That was the first view. And again, the reason why they say this is because, remember, the principle, an endless chain of events is impossible. Right? So Allah can't be eternally one who is the creator. Right? Because that means if Allah's always been creating, it's an endless chain of events. Do you understand? Right? So they can't affirm names for Allah, and they can't affirm attributes for Allah, and going into eternity in the past. And as for the Ash'aris and the Maturidis, they said that Allah has always been named with names and with attributes, but the effects of those names and attributes only manifested themselves when He created this creation, because they believe that this is the only creation that Allah ever created. He only ever created. There's only this universe, this one universe, and this is the one universe that He created. So even though Allah was eternally Al-Khaliq, the creator, Al-Razzaq, the provider, Ar-Rahman, Ar-Rahim, Al-Malik, and so on and so forth, all of His other names, the effects of those names only manifested themselves and only showed themselves when He created this creation. You understand? So meaning there was never ever any instance of mercy shown by Allah before He created this creation. And the same can be said about all of the other names and attributes. So this is what their view is. And again, for the same reason, is that they say that an endless chain of events in the past is impossible. So if for example if Allah was in eternity showing mercy, or if Allah in eternity was creating, or if Allah in eternity was speaking, for example, that's an endless chain of events going back in eternity, which is impossible for them, because without that, they can't prove that the universe is created to the atheists. Do you understand? Right? So they need to remain consistent with that principle in order for their proof to the atheists that, you know, the universe is created and has a creator, for it to, you know, hold water and you know, to remain consistent. So for that reason, they said that Allah, although Allah was eternally one who, you know, was the creator, provider, sustainer, the one who shows mercy, the one who, you know, gives life, takes life, and so on and so forth, that it only manifested itself when He created this creation. And we said that this view is false, and it's like saying, for example, that when we say about a man that he is merciful, yet we have never seen ever in the entirety of his life a single instance or a single display of mercy from him. So how then have we called him, you know, merciful? Or likewise, if we say that a man is generous and kind, yet we've never ever seen a single instance of kindness and generosity in his whole life ever, how then have we named him to be kind and generous? It's impossible, right? So if we say someone is kind, then there must be a manifestation of his kindness. If we say someone is, you know, merciful, there must be some manifestation of mercy having come from him, as a result of which we say that he is indeed merciful and kind. So this is impossible. So this view of the Ash'aris, all they're really trying to do really is to kind of patch up and to make everything consistent with that proof of theirs. This is false. Rather, we say that if Allah is the creator, the provider, the sustainer, the one who is merciful, the one who is kind, the one who is forgiving, then you know, the effects of those names and attributes must be manifested. So anyway, that was the view of the Ash'aris and Maturidis. And as for the view of Ahlul Sunnati wal Jama'ah, if you remember, we said that we believe that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has eternally been with all of His names, eternally been with all of His attributes, and because He is the doer of whatever He wills, as Allah says, فَعَالٌ لِمَا يُرِيد, Allah is the doer of whatever He wills, then we, upon the evidence in the book and the Sunnah, we believe that Allah has, you know, from His attributes are those which are what we call muta'addi, as in they are transitive. They mean there are some attributes which require another object, right? For example, to show mercy, then there has to be something to which mercy is shown. This is what we mean, that some of Allah's names are muta'addi, meaning that they are transitive, they need another object for the meaning to be complete. This is what we mean by transitive. And so Allah has many names which are transitive, meaning that they need another object for them for the meaning to be complete, like creating, for example, like forgiving, for example, like giving life and taking life, for example. All of these are what we call transitive names. And so Allah has eternally been described with all of His names, including these transitive names, like the creator and the provider, and the one who gives life and the one who takes life, and the one who forgives, and the one who is kind and generous, and so on and so forth. So for that reason, we believe that the effects of Allah's names and the athar of Allah's attributes have always been manifested, have always been shown. And for that reason, we do not believe that this creation, based upon the evidence in the book and the Sunnah, that it is permissible, it is yajuz, that there are many other creations which Allah created, and that Allah's names and Allah's attributes have always been manifested, and there was never a time when any of His names and attributes were not manifested. Right? So this is different to the belief of the Ash'aris and the Maturidis, because again they are relying upon that principle. An endless chain of events in the past is impossible, and this principle is false. It is false because Allah is eternal, His names are eternal, His attributes are eternal. Therefore Allah has eternally been the one who speaks if He wills, and the one who creates if He wills, and the one who forgives if He wills, and the one who provides sustenance if He wills. And He has eternally been like that. For that reason we say that an endless chain of events in the past is possible. It is possible, it is permissible. There's nothing wrong with that. Just like an eternal chain of events in the future is also possible. You know, Allah will always eternally be the one who creates, provides, sustains, and so forth. So this is how we believe in this particular issue of Allah's names and attributes, and how it relates to His creation. Right? So can you see from this you should really understand the difference between the view of Ahlul Sunnati wal Jama'ah. Right? We are basing our view purely upon the Quranic texts and the hadith of the Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam. But as for the Ahlul Kalam, because they have devised a false, corrupt proof, for which they need a false premise in order to connect the proof and make it valid, then they have to take a certain position towards Allah's names and attributes. And this is the reason why they are led to say what they are saying, or whether they are the Jahmiyyah or the Mu'tazila, or whether they are the Ash'aris or the Maturidis. Right. So now that we've got this clear, now that all of this should be inshallah clear to you, we're going to see what Shaykh Saalih Aal al-Shaykh has said now. And so we come to this issue of at-Tasalsul, which is again a word. The word literally means a chain. A silsila literally means a chain. It's from the same root. So here what it means at-Tasalsul means, for example, we say that, to give an example, that for Z to exist there must have been Y, right? And for Y to exist there must have been X, and for X to exist there must have been W, and going back, and so we go back in eternity, right? So we go all the way back into eternity. We just keep going back and back and back. And likewise, this is tasalsul in the past, fil madi, in the past. Then likewise in the future we say, if there's A, then there must be something after it which is B, and if there's B, there must be something after it which is C, right? And B leads to C, and then C leads to D, and then we go on, keep going on. We never stop. We just keep going on and on and on and on and on, and it never ends. So this is at-tasalsul in the future. This is eternal, endless chain of events in the future. So this is the general idea. This is the general concept. And when we look at this concept, so remember, the position of the Ahlul Kalam, who are the Jahmiyyah and the Mu'tazila and the Ash'aris and the Maturidis and other than them, all of their positions on Allah's names and attributes are built around, again, these concepts. So we need to look at this concept and this idea of an endless chain of events and look at the various positions towards it. So there are two different ways to look at it. One way we're going to look at it first of all is with respect to Allah's attributes. At-tasalsul fi sifatillah. Right? Is there, can we say an endless chain of events with respect to Allah's attributes? Right? So the answer should already be clear to you from the introduction. But anyway, when we look at the issue of Allah's attributes, and are there endless chain of events with respect to Allah's attributes, which literally means that Allah's attributes are eternal, then we have a number of different positions on this issue between the various groups. The first position, right, is the position of the Jahmiyyah and the Mu'tazila, a group of the Mu'tazila. They say that an endless chain of events in the past and an endless chain of events in the future is impossible. So they deny it both ways. They deny it both ways, right? As in with respect to Allah's attributes. Right? So again, try to link this to what we believe as Ahlul Sunnah. We believe that Allah has eternally been the one who creates and provides and sustains. So Allah, we can say that Allah has always, Allah in eternity, if He wills, whenever He wished, He creates, He provides, He sustains. And so this goes back in eternity with no beginning. Because Allah has no beginning, and His names have no beginning, and His attributes have no beginning. So therefore Allah in eternity is fa'alul lima yurid, the doer whatever He wills. Now to the Jahmiyyah and the Mu'tazila, this eternal chain of events in the past as it relates to Allah's attributes is impossible. They deny it. And also they say that eternal chain of events in the future is impossible as well. Right? So both the past and the future. And we will see that it is because of this reason that Al-Jahm bin Safwan said that eventually all the creation, paradise, hellfire will eventually perish. It will come to an end. Why? Because Allah continuing to sustain and provide and keep alive and so on and so forth, which is a chain of events in the future, that this has to come to an end, because it's impossible. So therefore, paradise and all its inhabitants, hellfire, all its inhabitants, they will perish, come to an end, there will be nothing, everything will stop. Right? This is what Jahm bin Safwan said, because he said that endless chain of events in the future is impossible. And the Mu'tazila, or a group from them, they said that a similar view. They said what will happen eventually is that all of the movements will come to an end. So for example, the people in hellfire, there will be a point at which they will just stop and remain static and no more motion. It will just stop. Right? Because this is from their way of endless chain of events in the future is impossible, meaning that there will be no more movements and nothing, nothing after that. So this is the view of the Jahmiyyah and the Mu'tazila. As for the view of, there's another view. So again, this is denial both in the past and the future. The second view is denial in the past. So they deny that an endless chain of events in the past with respect to Allah's attributes is possible. So they deny it, so that it's impossible. But they say in the future it is possible. So they accept it in the future, but they deny in the past. And this group, these are the Ash'aris and the Maturidis and the people from the Ahlul Kalam. So they say what they mean by this. You can see how this fits in with their position, because remember, they say that even though Allah has always been described with names and attributes, the effects of those attributes only manifested and showed when He created this creation. Do you understand? Right. So that means for them an endless chain of events in the past is impossible. Meaning that there was nothing of Allah's manifestation of Allah's attributes shown at all for a very, very long period of time. Right? Up until Allah created this creation. Right? So therefore for them, endless chain of events is impossible, and that's why they hold this view that they hold. So Allah has always been the creator, the provider, the sustainer, the one who forgives, the one who gives life, the one who takes life. But none of the action took place. There was no effects from Allah's names and attributes manifesting themselves at all for a long, long period in eternity, up until Allah created this creation. Right? So for them, endless chain of events in the past is impossible, but endless chain of events in the future is, they accept it. Right? So in other words, paradise will exist forever, hellfire will exist forever, Allah will continue to provide, Allah will continue to sustain, Allah will continue to, and manifest His, attributes and so on and so forth, and that will continue in eternity, in the future. Right? Now this position, again, it fits in with their position on the names and attributes, but really it is a contradictory position. It doesn't make any sense, because if you affirm an endless chain of events in the future, then you have to affirm an endless chain of events in the past, right? Because the way Shaykh al-Islam Ibn Taymiyyah rahimahullah, he explains this is, he says that if you claim that Allah's attributes only manifested after Allah created this creation, then when Allah created this creation, then after that, Allah showed an instance of mercy, or Allah showed an instance of forgiveness, or Allah showed an instance of accepting somebody's repentance, and then after that, so in relation to what comes after, the past has already been, if you know what I mean, right? So to give an example, like for example, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He constantly forgives, right? So He'll forgive people who've already perished, many centuries ago, and He's forgiving us now. Then He'll forgive, maybe in the next century He'll forgive somebody else. So in relation to the next century, there's already something that's preceded before it. And in relation to this century, there's already something that's preceded before that. And in relation to that century, there's always a century preceded before that. So by you saying an endless chain of events in the future is possible, but not an endless chain of events, that's a contradiction. It's a contradiction, because there's no event that you are affirming which happens except there was something before it as well. Do you understand? So it makes no sense to say an endless chain of events in the future is possible, but not in the past. It doesn't make sense. So anyway, this brings us to the third saying, and this is the saying of Ahlul Sunnati wal Jama'ah, that endless chains of events, as in relation to Allah's attributes, as in Allah's the effects of Allah's attributes manifesting themselves, we say this is permissible, it is established in the past, and it is established in the future. In the future. And we have no problem. This is what the evidence, all of the evidence indicates. And, likewise, in the future, we know that the hereafter is eternal, paradise is eternal, hellfire is eternal. So therefore, we see that Allah's attributes being manifested eternally in the future. This is like from the proofs. And so we don't have any problems in affirming it in the past nor the future. And this is what the evidence in the Quran, all of it indicates in any case. And there's actually a fourth position, but no one actually holds it. There's no one holds it because so the fourth position would be that an endless chain of events in the future is impossible, but an endless chain of events in the past is possible. But no one, this is only from the angle of exhausting all the possibilities, but no one actually holds this view from any of the groups. No one actually holds this view. So, that's irrelevant. So anyway, the point that we're making here is that this issue of the endless chain of events, this concept in the past or the future, this is fundamentally tied to the issue of Allah's attributes and His names and how they relate to the creation. And the reason why the various groups, they held the positions that they held is because this issue of an endless chain of events, they employed it and they incorporated it into that proof that we mentioned, by which they try to argue against the philosophers and the atheists, that the universe has a beginning and therefore has a creator. But they implemented a wrong principle which clashes with the book and the Sunnah. So anyway, this is so far we've looked at the angle with respect to Allah's attributes, endless chain of events with respect to Allah's attributes. We can also look at it from another angle, looking at purely from the creation. At the creation, right? So, because remember, this issue of endless chain of events, we can look at it from a number of different ways. First of all, let me give you three examples. First of all, we can look at it from the angle of that if there's a creator, or something created, or a creator, then that creator needs another creator. Right? Then that creator needs another creator. So now we're speaking in terms of an agent, a being. So we're talking an endless chain of beings. Right? So again, that's impossible. We don't accept that. Right? Because Allah is the originator and the creator. Then we can look at an endless chain of events as it relates to the actions or the attributes. He was speaking about Allah's attributes. So again, we affirm that we accept this and we believe in it, that there is an endless chain of events in the past and the future as it relates to Allah's attributes and Allah's actions. Then we've looked at the fa'il, the doer. We've looked at the attributes, the sifat, right? So we affirm endless chain of events, past and future for the sifat, but not for the fa'il, because there's only one creator, eternal creator. And then we can also look at the things created, endless chain of events at the things created. So this is the next issue that we're going to look at as well now. And really, there are only two positions. There are in fact only two positions, and there are two issues. First of all, what we mean by this is, for example, let's say that we have a creation, it's a created thing, and that creation itself needs another creation before it. And then that creation needs another creation before it. Do you understand? That we deny, we reject that. We don't accept that. This is impossible. And in fact, all of the groups are agreed upon this. No one disputes about this. The Jahmiyyah, the Mu'tazila, all of the Ahlul Kalam are agreed upon this, that there cannot be an endless chain of events in terms of the created things. Right? So in other words, saying that this creation needed another creation for it to exist, and that creation needed another creation for it to exist, and that creation needed... Right, so we go back in eternity. In other words, what we're saying, that what this leads us to then is the saying that all matter is eternal. Right? Matter has always existed. This is wrong. This is incorrect. So we deny this, and there's no dispute about this between any of the groups. Everyone is agreed upon this. Ahlul Sunnah with Ahlul Kalam, they all agreed upon this. Right? So this is obviously false. There's only one group, and they are not from the Muslims. They are the philosophers. They say that matter is eternal. Matter has always existed, And everything that we see from the universe, it is just coming from itself. One form of creation leads to another form of creation, leads to another form of creation, but matter has always been there. So this is false. We deny that and we reject it. Right? As for the second, which is eternal things or creatures in the future, then this is something that we do not deny, because paradise is eternal and hellfire is eternal, right? So these issues, then we affirm an endless chain of events, as in paradise will always exist and its inhabitants will always exist, and their actions of enjoying the bliss and the reward in paradise will always exist. So this clearly is an endless chain of events in the future as it relates to something created beings. Right? So this we affirm this, and we don't deny this at all. And this is what is established in the in the book and the Sunnah. So that's the second issue now that we've covered, right? So we've covered it from the angle of Allah's attributes. Is that clear to everybody? That with respect to Allah's attributes, we accept endless chain of events in the past, endless chain of events in the future, because Allah is fa'alul lima yurid. He's always had His name, He's always had His attributes, do whatever He wills, right? Now we've just looked at the issue of the actual creatures, actual creation. And so we say that an endless chain of events, as in one creation needing another creation before it, then that creation needing another creation before it for it to exist, and that creation, we deny that. Right? Rather, what we say, that if Allah wills, He will create a creation, right? And if Allah wills, He will then create another creation. But there's no such thing as this creation needs another creation for it to exist, and that creation needs another creation. You understand the difference between the two, right? So we're speaking here about the creation itself. There's no such thing as at-Tasalsul, endless chain of events, as it relates to the created thing itself, right? So that's the second issue. The third issue now that we're looking at, which is at-Tasalsul, it is from a third angle now. It is to do with causes and their effects. Causes and their effects. Cause and effect. Right? So, basically, there are two views to do with cause and effect. And what we mean by cause and effect, for example, is if I was to drink this, if I was thirsty and I was to drink this water, right? Cause and effect. So now my thirst has been quenched and the water was the cause. Right? This is cause and effect. And in the creation, we see, there are innumerable, we can't even count them, causes and effects. Like, for example, fire burns. Put your hand in the fire, then the fire, there's an effect, right? And so, causes and effects are so many in the whole of the creation. Likewise, things like, if you strive and if you work hard, the effect will be that there will be something positive that will come out of it. This is a cause and an effect. So basically, now the reason why this is connected is because, again, some of the innovators, upon that same principle, they denied certain things. So anyway, let's have a look. The first group are people like the Ash'aris and the Qadaris, and they deny cause and effect. They deny cause and effect. Right, and what this means is, I will give you an example. Let's say, for example, I took a stone, and I threw the stone on that window, and the stone was, was quite heavy, quite bulky, and I threw it on the window. Then the glass will break. It will break. We know from experience it will break. Right. What these people say, now what we as Ahlul Sunnah say, we say that the stone has an inherent quality, right? It has an inherent quality and a characteristic, as a result of which it led to the glass breaking, right? So we believe that things have inherent qualities and powers that Allah has put within them. So therefore we can affirm that there are causes and effects. And we can say that the stone broke the window, right? Because we affirm cause and effect. Whereas what these people say who deny cause and effect, they say it wasn't the stone that broke the window. It wasn't the stone that broke the window, but rather it is from Allah's aada, it is from Allah's habit, that whenever a stone comes into contact, at the point at which the stone comes into contact with a window at momentum, at speed, then Allah will cause the window to break. Allah will then cause the window to break. Not that there is actually a cause and effect in operation. Do you understand? Likewise, if someone was to put the hand in the fire, right? So in other words, they would say that the stone didn't break the window. Rather, Allah created the breaking of the window, and He made it to coincide with the stone, meeting the window at momentum, at speed. Right? So this is what they say. And they apply this to every single thing, every single cause and effect. So for example, when you have your meal tonight and you feel satiated, you no longer feel hungry, it wasn't the food that removed your hunger. Rather, when you happened to eat the food, then Allah created the removal of the hunger to make it coincide with your action of taking food. Do you understand? So what they're trying to do is, what they're essentially trying to do is to ascribe to Allah every single thing as they see it. All power belongs only to Allah, but in a way which is incorrect. By denying cause and effect, this is wrong, because we believe that Allah has put inherent qualities in things. So we can say the fire burns. We can say that the food removes hunger. We can say that the water quenches the thirst, because Allah has put within it inherent qualities. So Allah is the creator of all things, but He put within the water inherent qualities and characteristics which lead to certain effects. So Allah is the creator of the cause, and He is the creator of the effect. Right? Allah created the cause. The cause here is the water. He created it, and He gave it inherent qualities and characteristics, and He made it to be a cause. He made it to be a cause. So still, Allah is the cause of all things. And when we drink water and the water removes our thirst, then we can say that water removed our thirst. Because Allah made it to be like that. Whereas what the people who deny cause and effect, what they are saying is that Allah makes the effects to be created at the point when the action coincides. So for example, when you drink the water, then Allah will simultaneously create that effect of the thirst being removed. Do you understand? So in other words, they are denying cause and effect. They are denying that things have inherent causes and inherent effects. This is the position of the Ash'aris, also the view of the Qadariyah, and also Ibn Hazm. He also held this view as well. So is that clear to you? Is that clear? And as for the position of Ahlul Sunnati wal Jama'ah, which is that we say that causes lead to their effects, and they do this in an endless way. Right? Meaning that they will always lead to their effects. Do you understand? So we affirm this as a matter of like at-Tasalsul, as in an endless chain of events, because Allah says, as the Shaykh mentions here, فَلَن تَجِدَ لِسُنَّةِ اللَّهِ تَبْدِيلًا وَلَن تَجِدَ لِسُنَّةِ اللَّهِ تَحْوِيلًا. Allah says you will never find in the sunnah of Allah any alteration, and you will not find in the sunnah of Allah any change. Right? So Allah has created the creation. He has placed within the creation certain causes, and He's tied to those causes certain effects. And this is a continuous affair. It always continues and will remain. Just like in paradise, there will be causes and effects. Right? We eat food, we drink water, we drink honey, we drink the wine that does not intoxicate, and it will have a certain effect. Allah has made it to be like that, and that will be for eternity. Right? So in terms of cause and effect, we believe in at-Tasalsul, the endless chain of events with respect to cause and effect, and that it exists in Allah's creation, and that obviously we don't believe that the water in and of itself, of its own accord, independently removes your thirst. Rather, we say Allah has put that quality within it. But we do affirm that there is an inherent quality within it. Do you understand? So this is the view of Ahlul Sunnah, that we believe in causes and their effects, and we believe Allah created the causes and their effects, and He tied the causes to the effects, and that this is something in which there will be tasalsul, as in like an endless chain. It will always continue. An example clearly is that of paradise, and so this is the third angle from which we look at the issue of at-Tasalsul. Right, so is that clear? Is that clear? Any questions about that? Clear? Okay. So anyway, this ends the discussion of at-Tasalsul. Right? So we looked at it from 3 different angles. First angle was from what? Allah's sifat, attributes. And what do we believe about that? Yeah, in the past and the future, we affirm that. Because Allah is eternal, always existed, and He will continue to manifest His attributes just as He has always manifested His attributes in what has passed. And the second aspect that we looked at was from the angle of what? That the creation itself. And what we mean here is not, because remember, we already believe that from the point of view of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, if He wills to create a creation, He will create a creation. If He wills to create another creation, He'll create that creation. That's clear, we're already clear about that. What we're speaking of here now is a creation needing another creation before it. Then that creation needing another creation before it. That tasalsul, that endless chain of events in that manner is false. We don't believe in that, because that would mean an eternal universe. It would mean matter which is eternal. Obviously we don't believe that. We believe that everything besides Allah has an origin. And that was the second angle. So we said that in the past it's impossible, but in the future it is. Remember the second one that we're talking about the creation. In the future it is possible, yeah, because paradise is eternal. Hellfire is eternal. Paradise is eternal. Right? It will always remain. It will continue to exist. But nothing in the past. We don't say in the past that any one particular thing has always been in existence for eternity. Do you understand? That's impossible. That's kufr. That's disbelief. But in the future, paradise always exists. Hellfire always exists. Right? And the third angle we looked at was from the angle of what? Cause and effect. Right? Which is, it's the cause and effect. And so we said that we believe, first of all, we believe in cause and effect, that Allah has put inherent causes and effects in the creation, and we believe that that in this issue that there will be, like endless chain. It will continue, meaning that there will always be cause tied to the effect. It will be a continuous thing and continue in the future in eternity. An example we gave is that of paradise. Obviously, there are causes and effects in paradise, and Allah has created them like that, and they will continue in the future for forever. Okay, so that ends the discussion of at-Tasalsul. We have a few more points then to finish off, because remember we're still looking at the same passage. We are still looking at the same passage when at-Tahaawee is discussing the eternality of Allah's attributes and how He never acquired any attributes after creating the creation. So there's one or two more issues here that the Shaykh mentions here. From them is that we see that at-Tahaawee says in his creed, وَكَمَا كَانَ بِصِفَاتِهِ أَزَلِيًّا. He says that just as Allah was, بِصِفَاتِهِ. Now pay attention to the fact that he used the particle ba. The particle ba, وَكَمَا كَانَ بِصِفَاتِهِ. That just as Allah was with His attributes. The word ba is significant because there is a difference between the way we speak about Allah's attributes and the way those who deny His attributes, the Mu'tazila, the way they speak about His attributes. Right? So what we say is whenever we speak about Allah's attributes, we say Allah with His knowledge. Right? Allah with His power. Allah with His mercy. Whereas what the Mu'tazila say is that they use a different particle. They use the letter waw. They say Allah and His mercy. Allah and His knowledge, Allah and His power, and Allah and His will. Right? So they use the particle waw. Allah wa qudratuhu, Allah wa ilmuhu, Allah wa, and so on and so forth. We say Allah bi ilmihi, Allah with His knowledge, Allah with His knowledge. Allah bi qudratihi, Allah with His power, and so on and so forth. And the reason is because the Mu'tazila, they distinguish between Allah and His attributes, and they raise an issue. They say, is an attribute the same as, are Allah's attributes Allah, or are they different? Do you understand? They raise like a technical issue. Is the attribute, like for example, when I say, so and so is generous, Ahmed is generous, right? When I say Ahmed is generous the same thing as Ahmad? And is Ahmad the same thing as generous? Or is generous something separate from Ahmad? And is Ahmad something separate from generous? Right? This was an issue that the Mu'tazila raised in order to try to confuse people and try to argue for the rejection of the attributes. So remember, they don't affirm Allah's attributes. So they had two ways of dealing with it. One way was to say, Ahmad and generosity is the same thing. You get it? So in other words, they're leading to the thing that Allah's attributes are the same thing. Allah's mercy is Allah. Allah's ilm is Allah's essence. Do you understand? Right? So we don't have any separate, distinct attribute. Allah's power, Allah's qudra, well, it is Allah. It is Allah's essence. There's no difference. Do you understand? So they're making all of Allah's attributes to be synonymous with and the same thing as the essence itself. Right? That's one way that they try to tackle the issue of denying Allah's, or they try to establish their denial of Allah's attributes. The other way was to say, well, actually Allah's ilm is other than Him. Allah's mercy is other than Him. Allah's creating is other than Him. Allah's forgiveness is other than Him. Right? So now they make the attribute something separate from Allah, but just to be something which is manifested in the creation. So when we say about Allah's mercy, what do we mean Allah's mercy? Well, Allah's mercy is just the manifestation of mercy that we see in the creation. Not that there is mercy with Allah. So this is why the Mu'tazila say, Allah wa rahmatuhu. Allah and His mercy. Allah wa ilmuhu. Allah and His knowledge. Allah and so on and so forth. Because they made a distinction. Whereas what we say is, we say Allah bi'ilmihi. Because the particle ba, it means musahaba. It means like, that one thing is tied and accompanies the other. So Allah with His knowledge, that's what we say. Allah bi-ilmihi, Allah bi-qudratihi, Allah bi-mashi'atihi. Allah with His knowledge, Allah with His will, Allah with His power. And this is how we speak of Allah's attributes. So that's the next issue. And this brings us to an end of this passage. This brings us to an end of the various issues to do with this passage. Inshallah, I think what we'll do, we'll stop the lesson here. And we'll carry on with the remainder, inshallah, in the next lesson. But if there's any questions on anything that's been said in this lesson and the last lesson, because I know that the two lessons are connected, then we can maybe have a small, maybe 10 minutes for that, if anybody has anything, inshallah ta'ala. So remember that the two lessons are connected, and in fact really this one to do with tasalsul comes first, and then the effects of it, meaning the positions of the various groups to do with Allah's names and attributes, follows on from this issue. So okay, I'll ask you guys questions then. Yeah. Well, the ones who deny cause and effect are the Ash'aris, the Qadariyah, the ones who deny Qadar, and Ibn Hazm followed them in that as well. Ibn Hazm was a 5th century scholar from Andalus.
When they deny Qadar, how do they explain that? How do they, what's the explanation for that?
Well, the Qadariyya, obviously this is a separate discussion, but the Qadariyya, they obviously they deny, they have an issue which they discuss, which is to do with the inherent qualities in things, right? So, for example, they say that man, in order for man to be accountable, right, then he has got to be the creator of his own actions, right? Otherwise the whole issue of accountability doesn't really make sense. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has no role in willing and creating the actions of the servants. right? But then there's a connected issue that follows on from that, which is what about the things around mankind in which there are, inherent qualities, and where do those inherent qualities, where do they come from, and where do they arise from, and how do they relate to the implications upon man and his responsibility? They have a connected discussion. So really, the conclusion they come back down to is the same as what we mentioned here, is that they deny cause and effect, but they take that position from the angle of al-qadr, from the angle of trying to reconcile man's accountability with the fact that he has choice and will and creates his own actions as they see it. So anyway, that's quite a lengthy discussion. We have to really put some other background into that one before we come to why they hold that particular view. But from this angle, we're looking at from the Ash'aris, Maturidis, and Asma wa Sifat, and the issue of endless chain of events, and coming from that angle, from that angle. Maybe when we do al-Qadr, inshallah, later on in the book, we'll discuss it then. Okay then, so from the last lesson then, what were the three different positions towards the attributes, if you remember? Because we remember we're speaking about the relationship between Allah's attributes and His creation, right? And the effects of Allah's names and attributes being manifested, right? So we said there were three positions and three views. So first question is, can anyone just tell me who are the holders of these three views and three positions? I just want to give you the names. Group one. Is that the first group? They hold one position, right? What's your other group? What's your position? Okay, that's the second position, and the third position. Okay, so now we've got the names. Okay, now what was the first position of the Jahmiyyah and the Mu'tazila? No. That's right. It's connected. It's all connected. But I'm speaking from the previous lesson. What was their view as it relates to Allah's names and attributes and their relation to the creation? Yeah. Yeah. Okay.
Well, they never affirmed it because they don't.
Yeah. Yeah.
They say Allah wasn't the creator until He created the actual being.
Okay, that's right. Yeah.
Just called him al-Khalq.
Yeah.
They don't believe in attributes.
But the names of Allah, so they didn't affirm the names or attributes of Allah up until after He created. But what were those attributes to them? Were they actual attributes, or were they just? That's right. Yeah, you got it. Right. So in other words, what is Allah's creating? Was there an act of Allah called creating? No. Rather, Allah's creation is just the creation. Yeah, that's right. Yeah. And likewise with Allah's mercy and whatever. So in other words, to them, Allah was named the creator by, after He created the creation, it's a created name. Right. Okay. The second position was?
They affirmed the names and attributes before the creation, but only manifested after this creation.
Yeah.
Long period of time, nothing happened.
That's right. Long period of time, no manifestation of Allah's attributes, even though He is the creator, provider, sustainer, doer of whatever He wills, whatever, for a long time in eternity, up until Allah created this creation. Then all of a sudden, His attributes became manifested. And but this is a view of who? And is this view correct? Why is it correct? Why is it incorrect?
Because Ahlul Sunnah believe the names and attributes were they were with Him at all times.
All time, yeah.
So it was created.
Yeah. Yeah. Allah. There are many of His names which are muta'addi. Muta'addi means transitive. Transitive means that you need another object for the meaning to be complete. It's like, for example, I'll give you an example in English. If I say that I slept, Is that verb, is that action, is it transitive or non-transitive? Do I need another object for me to complete that action or not? It's non-transitive. Non-transitive, right? Because to sleep you don't need. Whereas if I said I hit and I stopped there, is that sentence complete? No, because to hit requires another object for the meaning to be complete. Right? So this is what in Arabic, this is what we call muta'addin wa ghayr muta'addin. Muta'addin means that it is an act that needs another object for it to be complete. Right? And so we see many of Allah's names are muta'addin. Right? Like Allah creating it requires an object that's to be created. Forgiving requires an object to be forgiven. Providing, sustaining requires an object to be, and giving life and taking life. And so all of these are muta'addin. And so Allah has eternally been, one who creates, provides, sustains, forgives, gives life, takes life, whatever. And so we say that, Allah's, for Allah to be named with those names and those attributes, and His names have always manifested and shown, and so therefore we say that Allah has in eternity been named with names and been named with attributes, and the effects have always been manifested. And this would mean we consider it permissible that yes, Allah may have created other creations, may have whatever. We accept that to be permissible and acceptable upon the proofs in the book and the Sunnah. So those are the three positions. Okay, now why do they hold these views? Yeah, because what? Yeah, well, they devised some argument, right? So their positions on the names and attributes. Yeah. So why is it that they are holding? So we've just looked at now, the three positions or the two positions of the Jahmiyyah Mu'tazila. We're just looking at a position that they're holding, but why were they led to hold that particular position about Allah's names and attributes and the relationship to the creation, right? What's the reason that led them to that? Yeah. Okay. And so what they were trying to argue? They were trying to argue what?
Everything, endless chain of events in it.
Yeah. That.
If you have an attribute or something,
yeah.
That must have something before that.
Yeah. And if we go back, there must be, so for the creation, to prove that it's created, there must be at one point at which all events stop. Right? Otherwise we can't have endless chain of events. This is the argument they needed to connect all the argument together, right? And so for that reason, yeah, so that's why they held a position about Allah's. So for example, that's what, yeah. So if Allah, for example, was always eternally creating or providing or sustaining, does that clash with the proof?
Yeah.
It doesn't. Why? Because
it's not endless chain.
Because that's an endless chain. Yeah, Allah is eternal. So they can't accept that. So they have to say, well, Allah spent a time doing nothing, and nothing manifested from Him. Then, see, now this is where it gets interesting, you see. Because when these people began to argue in this manner against the philosophers were very smart and shrewd, and they came and said, okay, for a period of time Allah was doing nothing, as you guys claim, and then all of a sudden He decides to create the creation. So what led from the change from that instance to this instance? What led to it? What led to it? So why wasn't any speech or action being exercised by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and then all of a sudden it did? Right? There must have been something or some reason or some whatever that led to. Well, obviously the Ash'aris and whatever they have to deny that. You see, they can't because they can't give any reason as to why all of a sudden, at any particular point in time, the creation should just come to be, and Allah should just create the creation. Right? There has to be, and so this is really where these people, unfortunately, they open the door for the philosophers to come and attack Islam. And they said, well, your position is ridiculous. This is a ridiculous position. This is logically irrational. You can't even give an explanation to it. And so therefore, in our view, it is stronger to just hold and say that the universe is eternal, rather than hold your stupid view that says that a period of time Allah, did nothing, and then all of a sudden, for no reason whatsoever, there's no reason that they can give. It just, for Allah to be able to speak and act, it was impossible. Then it just became possible for no reason. That's stupid and ridiculous. We can't believe that. So our position. So they began to say that our position is better. Just say that the universe has always been there. It's always been eternal. It's always been there. So really, what they did was when they started messing about with this ilmul kalam and trying to argue with the reason and opposing the book and the sunnah, then these people came along and said, well, okay, thank you very much. You've opened the door for us. We're going to come now and attack it even more. So but anyway, so alhamdulillah, so we'll end the lesson there, inshallah, and we'll continue with the rest of this passage in the next lesson. Subhanakallahumma wa bihamdika ashhadu an la ilaha illa anta astaghfiruka wa atubu ilayk.